Okay, should we look at the camera? We look good. Done.
I should try to get Sam in here now. Yeah.
Oh, you absolutely need Sam. So, have you got something to say? Oh, good. Well done.
Wow.
That was Teddy's.
Wow.
You, David.
That is awesome.
TED Talk with me, Anna, and my co-host, Teddy.
Hey, Teddy.
And today we are joined by David Berner. Welcome to Pet Talk.
Well, thank you. I'm very happy to be here. That's a very cute dog. Tell me a little bit about Teddy. How old?
Teddy is 6 years old, and as you can see, he's a cockapoo. And you know what mixes, because Sam is also a poodle mix.
Yeah, my dog Sam is a part poodle, part golden retriever. Yeah, she is. She's a beauty, and that dog was very cute.
So, he's I have to tell everyone that Teddy has made a special appearance because really, as you can see, he's now still yawning. I've just woken him from his nap. He wasn't very thrilled. And when we were doing a little warm up and I asked him to speak, he gave me a bit of a grunt. So
little reluctant today.
Disappeared from the screen. I must explain. This is why. So getting a bit of extra payment at the moment for having put himself out. Anyway, so now, David, I have very much enjoying your book, Walks with Sam.
I appreciate that. Appreciate that very much.
So tell us about Sam.
Well, Sam is a 4-year-old golden doodle. She is black in color, got some gray in her, but she is the black comes from the mother's side, the standard poodle side. But she's got both. She's got both of the traits of those two animals in her. She loves to retrieve, so she's got the golden retriever in her. But she's got that sort of poodle elegance about her, if you know what I mean. Standard poodles tend to have this little bit of an elegant, almost arrogant way about them sometimes. She does that when she crosses her legs. When she sits, she crosses her legs over each other, and I call her, that's her Parisian look. She's sitting at a cafe in Paris somewhere with her legs like that because it just looks so, elegant. So she's got a little bit of both. She's got one of the sweetest dispositions. Now, I know dog owners everywhere will say all dogs are sweet, and that's what we all do when we love dogs, but she really does have a very sweet disposition, to the point where she loves everybody. She enjoys people's company. She's one of the, I've had dogs pretty much all my life, and she's probably one of the most loving and affectionate dogs I've had. I don't think there's any question about that. She's a good one.
Yeah, and when I was reading your book, and I think I'll just ask you to tell us a little bit about the book to begin with. You were talking about having dogs all your life, and you were talking about your first dog in the book,
right?
And I do. So you were a child. Tell us a little bit about your first dog then.
Yeah, my first dog was a full-bred collie. Her name was Sally. I'm not sure where that name came from. She was given to me when I was very young by my grandfather, and he kind of showed up at the door with the dog in his hands and handed it to my mother and said, "A boy needs a dog," one of those kind of things. My grandfather was kind of a man's man, best way to put it. And I had a dog, and my mother always liked dogs, so it wasn't an issue at all. But so I grew up with the dog. I was 1 year old or so when the dog was delivered to me, and I grew up with the dog, and the dog was by my side constantly. The dog was one of those kind of dogs where it just walked with you. You went we used to, there was a little bit of a forest across the street from us, and we'd play in the woods, as they say when you were kids, and dog was always beside me. So I immediately had this great affinity for dogs because it was just part of life. I had them around me all the time. So that dog was I can still see her face. I can still see her sweetness. I can still see her beside me walking. I, remember very vividly the day she died. I was just a little boy, a young man, young teenager, really. So I remember that dog very fondly. And the fact that my grandfather gave it to me, there's something special about that too. Yeah.
Yeah, it was when I read, a boy needs a dog. Oh, that is so true. I think children benefit so much from having friend a dog friend. And you write about how she got you through, some really difficult times in your childhood as well.
Yeah, she did. I mean, in the book, I read about a friend of mine at the time when I was a young boy who had become, quite friendly with, and we spent a lot of time together. And then he would just up and move. And I didn't know what that meant. I mean, no one in my life moved from our neighborhood, or my family was all very close. So that seemed like an odd thing to me. Why would you move? Why are you leaving me? Right. Um, and I remember our time together with that young man. And I remember walking home feeling sad the day that he moved. And it's in the book. And Sally, my first dog, was with me. And, Sally kind of, whether she did or not, she certainly made me feel more comfortable. Um, Whether she intuitively did that, I don't know. But she certainly made me feel better, made me sort of know that, not everything stays the same. Things change. And I started to learn that a little bit, through that experience. Um, no one had ever, my family didn't move. They lived on the same street, grandmothers and everybody, that's not how we lived. So for someone that I had been fond of to move away as a young boy, as an 8-year-old or something of that sort, that seemed like a very odd thing to me. And I almost felt abandoned. The dog made me feel better.
Exactly. And I think this is the point here. What struck me about that story in your book is you talk about how somehow, that time that you had between seeing the removal van move away,
Yeah.
and then being away for a while with your dog and walking home, that you were able to process the feelings.
Right.
Uh, it gave you
Yeah.
that space to process in the company of a being who is really like a sister to you because you grew up together.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And, no judgment, no fuss. She just allowed you to have that space whilst at the same time being there, which is a soothing experience. So
Right.
this value of dogs, well, of having an animal that you're close to, for many people, it's dogs, some it's cats as well.
Mm.
Just a closeness that allows you to process something that's happening whilst you have the comfort of a companion that doesn't say,
Yeah.
it just gives you the space to do it.
I didn't know. I'm not sure if I'm pretty sure that I didn't know that I was processing it at the time. Like, excuse me, I didn't really know that I was going through that sort of transformation. But when I look back at it, I'm like, well, that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what I was doing. I was learning how to process change, grief, whatever it may have been for an 8-year-old boy. I was beginning to do that. Um, and I guess we all have instances in our life where we kind of learn to begin to do that. Some certainly far more tragic than just a friend leaving. But the dog definitely allowed me to feel not alone while I was going through that process. I think it would have been much harder when I look back at it as a boy to gone through anything like that alone. So I spent a lot of time, walking home, taking the long way home, really, and probably not intuitively doing that, just, because I just needed more time and didn't know that I needed more time. So I just walked the long way with Sally beside me.
Well, you did exactly what you felt you needed to do. It wasn't a conscious decision, it wasn't a conscious thought,
Right.
but acted as children do on the feeling, and that's what happened. It's what I'm loving reading your book because it's so whimsical.
Mm,
It's I think what I appreciate about it is that you can't say that you're looking at the world through Sam's eyes, because a lot of the observations you're making are from a very human perspective. So we can't say that you're doing it through Sam's eyes.
right.
But I think what you're doing is you're doing it through Sam's lens. And what I mean by that
Mm,
is you really captured the way in which dogs are all about the small stuff, the detail, the little observations that they make as they're walking along in the
right.
street. And that's what makes it such a whimsical and at the same time philosophical book, is
Mm.
that you're doing it through her lens. I think you know what I
Yeah,
mean.
I think that's a really good observation, because I think it's easy to say that I'm, I mean, the blurb on the back of the book would say something like, seeing the world through a dog's eyes, but that's truly not it. I think you're hitting on the right thing. It's more through her sensitivity, her lens, as you say, but paying attention to that. As we were walking, I would pay attention to how she was seeing the world and going, oh, that thing or that thought, or I never looked at it that way. So she was sort of, she was, I don't know if this is the best way to put it, but she was sort of my shaman, in a way, right? She was kind of like, just pointing things out to me and going, there it is. So what do you think? You know, so I think that's a good way to put it. I don't, if you look at it this way, if I'd have taken those walks without Sam, I wouldn't have had the same experiences. There's no question about that. So was Sam an integral part? Was Sam, my lens in a way, as you put it? Yeah, there's no question about that, because I wouldn't have had the same experiences if I'd have just been taking the walks by myself. There's no question about that. Yeah.
That's the beauty, the joy of being with a dog. There are experiences that I have had that on walks that only Teddy has been party to.
Mm,
It's just been the two of us.
right.
And we had the human perspective and we had the dog perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So the most recent, which actually was a little while ago now, experience was walking in woods one day, and there were deer. There were two deer. And as so often happens with Teddy, I see things before he does because he's got his nose on the ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he misses. I mean, it's a running joke that I'm sure he's never seen a rabbit. And the reason it's a running joke is because I see them all the time. But he misses because his nose is always on the ground, because that is his perception door to the world.
Right.
So in this instance, there were two deer and they ran right across us, not very far from us at all. And I immediately put the lead on him because I knew what was coming next. He would smell them and run.
Yeah. Yeah.
I put the lead on him. And sure enough, about, I don't know, 20 seconds went by and suddenly he stopped sniffing and looked up and sniffed the air, and we were off. We were off. Yeah. I have to run with him when he's giving chase. But that is a unique experience. If I had been on my own, I wouldn't have had a giggle. I wouldn't have said, what were you doing? You missed it. And or I wouldn't have said to him as I did, yes, you're right. There was something there. And equally, I might have been looking in a different direction, missed it, and then wondered why it was that he was suddenly taking off because what it was he was smelling. So it was a really lovely moment where human and dog had the same incident, but two different experiences, although I guess parallel together. I'm not sure
Right. Yeah.
which better description. And that's the joy. And there's so many times like that where we have, he's the only one there when something happens. And this,
Right. I think, well, that's a really good observation, because I do think there's sort of parallel stories. They're going in the same way, the same direction, if you want to put it that way, but they are parallel stories, their story and your story. But I think the only way that you get anything out of that experience, though, is to be, and I don't want to get too new agey here, but certainly mindfulness of that moment. If you're not paying attention to that moment, if you're not sort of living right in that moment, which is very hard for us to do in this world, you're going to miss it, and I think that's a lot of what Sam taught me to do, is to slow down, be present. That isn't always easy for me to do. I think some people can do that a lot better than me. I work really hard trying to stay in the present. And it's a hard thing for humans in this, culture and life and society that we live in now. Very hard to stay present. Sam doesn't know any other way, right? Sam doesn't sit there and think about, oh, what was it like when I was a puppy? That doesn't happen, right? And she doesn't sit there and think like, well, am I gonna have Social Security when I grow up and get old? No, that's a human thing. Sam's not doing that. Sam is right there in the moment and all the time. And that's what was very, very good to have her along, because it forced me to do that, which I think is good for a lot of us to do if we can. So that was good.
This is, I think, possibly one of the best reasons to have an animal in our lives. It's that they bring us right back to ourselves, the core, the center, by saying, what matters is right here, right now. When a cat in your lap, purring. I mean, I've had cats in the past. I had one where it didn't matter. In fact, no, all of them. I've had 3 at different points.
Mm-hmm.
And it mattered that there was a laptop on my lap. They were coming.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they have no concerns for what you've got to do today.
And and I just had to put it aside and have a break. And whether it was for a minute, if I had a deadline or whatever, sometimes it could be a bit longer, we would just sit there and have a cuddle, and they'd be purring, and we know it brings our heart rate down. And the same thing with Teddy, when he wants to play, I have a choice. We either play with the toy he's offering me, or if I don't put down what I'm doing for a minute, and it's not a lot for a minute, and play. The next thing is he'll be raiding the laundry basket, because he knows that's going to get my attention.
So Teddy raids the laundry basket too. Sam does too. Well, you probably read in the book, Sam loves socks. Anywhere she can find a sock, she has got a sock. So that's the way it goes.
It's absolutely, it's the way of the world. So it's that I think, okay, well, Teddy is saying it's time for a break. How about I take a break?
Mm-hmm.
It'd only be about a minute, a game of tug, chasing him around the kitchen with his toy. But it's time for a break. And if I'm not able to, then, for any reason, then hopefully my partner is there. And one of us will play with him, because we taught him that. We taught him there are things you play with and there are things you don't play with. So if you want a game, you get something out of the toy box, and that's what you do. But on occasion, he says, well, look, that's not worked. You've not paid attention to me. So here's the next best thing, the laundry basket.
Yeah.
No. So the the wonderful thing about living with another species. They're not caught up in the pressure that we're under.
Yeah.
And they come in and they say, time to take a break.
Mm-hmm.
Be present right now.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Really comes through in your book.
Yeah, I think that was, something that took some time to, I mean, I knew it intuitively. I think we all know that intuitively, but to actually live it is something a little different. So I had to learn to do that. I mean, do I do that all the time? Do I, have I changed my life because of it? No, not necessarily, but it does make me consider it more often than I may have in the past. And those walks, they were part of a sabbatical. They were part of a period in my life where that was a good thing to do for me, to be more contemplative, about where I was. And Sam helped me do that. There's no question about that. And I think animals of all types, doesn't have to be a dog. Animals of all types they all live in the present. So it's a good lesson to learn, I think. I think it's highly impossible for a person in the modern world to always live in the present, and probably not practical. But if you can do it more than not, I think you can enrich your life, and animals help you do that.
By profession, I'm an analytical hypnotherapist, and one of the things that I'm constantly working with my clients to do is to help them to understand that they need to take breaks.
Mm.
So dog helps us to do that. We have to get out. We have to walk. There is something extremely therapeutic and calming about being in green spaces. And a dog, takes you to those green spaces. I wouldn't be walking in woodland every day if I didn't have Teddy. And that's the beauty of it, is that if we allow them, we're always very concerned with making them do what we want them to do.
Yeah, true.
Because there's so much pressure that a dog has to be well behaved, has to be socialized into our society. Okay, up to a point, that's true. But how about we also let them be dogs?
Yeah.
And the beauty is that when we let them be dogs, then they come into our world and bring us something very precious. And they get us out into where they feel comfortable, which is the outdoors. Mm-hmm. And that's something that we've clearly forgotten is exactly where we're able to.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because, so many times that, even now when I take Sam out for a quick walk around the block, I don't know if I'm really doing it for her, but I have to remind myself that, I should let her sniff a little bit, because that's what a dog is supposed to do. It's part of their, sensitivity to the world, and I should let them do that. So I try to give her time to sniff. Now, if I let her sniff, especially Sam, whenever she wanted to, the walk that I took this morning, I'd still be out there because she would just sniff forever. So there's got to be some control over that. But yeah, I agree with you. You got to let the dog be a dog. You got to let them do their thing.
One of my favorite teachers, behaviorists, the wonderful Sarah Fisher, who specializes in doing T-touch massage with animals. I remember I attended one of her workshops, and she described it as, well, just imagine that you're walking through a gallery and there's somebody always telling you, just as you stop, you want to look at a painting, that, you must go. They're always urging you to move, to go. And you're missing out on a great painting. That's the dog's perspective of smelling. So the world is their art gallery. And
that is a really good way to put it.
Yeah, I love that. Every time they stop to sniff, what they're doing is they're admiring a painting. And you've got to give them a little bit of time at least to enjoy the
Yeah,
painting.
that's a really good way to put it. I like that.
I
Yeah,
always do that because I really got it. Yeah, I really got it. Yeah, of course it is. We might be looking at color and, trees and but views, but what they have is their noses. That's the way they
yeah,
appreciate.
right. Yeah, yeah,
And I don't know about you, but what happens with me and Teddy is that there's often a dialogue going on where he's been sniffing something for some time. And I say to him, right, come on, let's go. Um, are you coming? And he comes along, and then somewhere along the road, I will stop to admire something. And he's barking, he's going, come on, let's go. He's now being impatient. And I say to him, well, you had the sniff back there. I'm having the view over here.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's true. Yeah,
Rubbing along.
it's a little give and take there. You got to have that. Yeah, I think I think in the book in Walks with Sam, I think that there's a little bit of that. There's that give and take of like, I'm the human, you're the dog. You got to give me some space, I'll give you some space. I think that comes across in the book too. That was a simpatico that we kind of figured out along the way. It's not like I hadn't walked my dog before. This is certainly not the issue, but it's just that I was much more consistent and had taken on a different mindset this time, which changed everything. And that's why the book is what it is, because it was from, I hope that it implies and gives you a sense of, change throughout the book. It's like from one thing to the other. It's like the dog helped you sort of get through changes, issues, uphill, downhill battles, sometimes monumental, sometimes not so much. But I think that's what I hope the book does, is it shows that, there's a metamorphosis of some kind there in my thinking, and maybe Sam's too, for some, for one reason or another. I'm not so sure about that, but she's probably obstinate about what she wants out of those walks. But maybe she learned something too. Who knows?
Yeah, I think, recently I've been thinking about Teddy, and I would be thinking, what kind of a human being would he be
Mm,
if he was human with his personality traits?
yeah.
Be, and I came to the conclusion that he would be a bit of a bit of a socialite, very much the party goer. That would be his thing, and moment, and possibly a short life because of the lack of impulse control, but incredibly loving. So I was thinking about that, and then I was thinking, what is he here to learn about? What is it that he's learning from us? And I've come to the conclusion he's here to experience love,
Mm,
perhaps to learn a little bit about self-control.
yeah.
I think that's possibly, if we're looking at things from a more philosophical perspective,
Yeah.
that
Mm,
here for, because he's landed in this very loving home, and we've spent a lot of time working together, me teaching him teaching me how to be a better teacher, and learning from each other in that way. So I think, and the biggest lesson he's had in his life is impulse control, because I know that puppies are impulsive, but he was a turbocharged impulsive puppy. So perhaps, and what he needed was, somebody who was going to work hard to teach him how to be a little bit, hold back a little bit.
yeah.
And that's what I think. So what about you with Sam? Who do you think she'd be?
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. When you said that, I started thinking about what she would be. I think she would be a little bit maybe slightly introverted, maybe just a little bit. Like she'll test, well, once she's your friend though, these kind of people, once they're your friend and once they feel comfortable with you, they are the best friend. And I think that's what she would do. She would be that kind of person. I also think that she would be in that vein, in that friendship, she would be your best friend. She would be the person that would be absolutely the one you would go to every time you needed something, when you needed a good talk or whatever. I think she would definitely be that. She's very loyal.
Yeah.
So I see that as her being that kind of a person, like a very strong, loyal friend. But I think she would have to earn your friendship a little bit. It wouldn't be like immediate. She would just earn it a little bit. She's a little bit, she loves everybody, but it takes a moment for her to feel like, oh, okay, this person's good. And then she's fine. And then she's great. So I think that, that kind of relationship, the human relationship that kind of equals that, is what she would be like. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the loyalty thing is a big one, as well for Teddy. I think he would be just your most loyal cheerleader. He'd be going, come on, do this. That's in his nature. Come on, you can do this. And just always very enthusiastic and fun to be with. Loyalty, absolutely. And, I've seen him when he's very sensitive to his canine friends. He's very sensitive to his human friends, but his canine friends, he's very sensitive to as well. And they only need to be a little bit concerned about something, and he is in there. I've got your back. Really. I did say he's impulsive. He's they're super fast, ready to have the back of his friends, and I like that in a sense. I worry because he could get into trouble, but I like that sense of loyalty and protection. He's very protective of his friends. So about that with Sam, I feel that.
Yeah. She definitely has that quality. And she's she wants to be with you all the time too. Sam is, and it's almost like she just checks on you. Like I have a little shed off my property here where I do my writing and stuff, and I leave the door kind of cracked. And if she's out, she'll just walk in, come over, put her head on my lap, look around for a minute, and then walk back out. It's almost like just checking. Yeah.
It's and Teddy also, and I think it's the retriever, poodle, cocker spaniel. They're used to being with people all the time. So these breeds are very much about companionship. So what is the naughtiest thing that Sam gets up to?
Wow. I think the only thing that she'll do sometimes is my wife and I will simply say, what do you have? Like she'll have something in her mouth that shouldn't be there. What do you have? The other day, we have some blinds in the dining area where, there's like the typical strings on the blinds that hang, and there's like a little knob at the bottom. Well, those blinds were all the way open, so the knob was low on the window. She had pulled off that little knob and was, gnawing on it underneath the dining room table. So that kind of stuff. That's what she does. She'll get things in her jaw that shouldn't be there. And a lot of times it's something that we have touched, something we have handled. A sock, a book. She brought a book upstairs from downstairs to me one time, and obviously it was a book I'd been reading, so my hand was on it, my oil, my scent. So things usually that have something to do with what we have handled for a while is usually what she'll do. Now, is that naughty? I don't know if that's necessarily naughty, but sometimes she will get into things that would be like, really, Sam? No, give me that. She had my wallet the other day. So, and then she was like, not necessarily gnawing on it, but just holding it in her mouth. I mean, I know why she did that in dog terms, but I really didn't want her gnawing on my leather wallet. So I had to take that.
And that's the thing, isn't it? Is that it's not naughty. I with Teddy, sometimes there's an element of mischief. You know,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
yeah, he's bored. He wants to get our attention, and therefore the laundry basket is really handy. So it's his way of saying he can't speak. He can't say, "Hey, I've been in here all morning. When's it time for the walk?" So
Yeah.
he's this is his way of saying, it's time to do something now. I'm bored.
Yeah.
So it's not naughty as such, but it's also very endearing that that they do this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there who lives with a dog will know about the sock stealing, and will know about the shoes and everything else that they can grab. Teddy once picked somebody's pocket. That
What?
was, yes, he did.
Really?
I was talking to a man about his beautiful Great Dane, and the next thing I knew, he had his head in the man's pocket and was pulling out a tissue. It's all he wanted. It was the tissue. He saw this. And I was pretty mortified, and extremely grateful that the person who had been the victim of his theft was also a dog person.
Oh, thank God. Yeah, right. Oh man. Man. Yeah, Sam will get into tissues and things like that too, and sometimes pull them apart in little pieces. But generally she's, it's mostly something that we've had a lot, our hands on for a long period of time. So
What is your favorite thing about the book that you've written, Walks with Sam?
oh wow. You mean in terms of the stories that are in there, or in terms of just the accomplishment of the work?
Actually, both. Do you have a favorite story? Let's start with that.
I think I don't know if I have a favorite story, but the one that seems to resonate with me most is the very last chapter. So about sort of it all coming together and understanding what I just through. Because that was the culmination of everything. That was the moment when it all became much more realized. So to me, that that moment of enlightenment, for if you want to put it that way, that moment of like, oh, this is what this was all about. I think that worked very well for me, and I felt good about that. The book, very frankly, the book wasn't supposed to be a book. The book was a blog at the beginning because I just wanted to have a space to write about the walks. And the more that I wrote, the more that it started to shape into something. And I thought, well, maybe there's something here. Maybe there's some thread here that makes this worthy of a, 40,000 word book. I don't know. So I played around with it and tried to find the themes, drop some of the blog entries out, but, rework some of the other ones. And it was, in terms of a writer kind of thing, in terms of writerly stuff, I felt like that was something new for me that I hadn't really thought about, that turned that into I mean, that's not unusual. You hear about that happening with other people, but I had not done that before. So it felt like an interesting way to come to the realization of the book, through something that I did not expect it to be a book. I wasn't planning on writing a book about walks with Sam. It just kind of came together and it kind of evolved into that. So on the writerly side, that was new to me. So that was an interesting adventure creatively.
Well, for my part, and I would recommend that everyone has a look at this wonderful collection of stories, I guess would say,
Sure. Yeah.
is your book is an invitation for all of us to accept the invitations that our dogs give us every day,
Mm-hmm.
to really focus on what's important in life, and not allow ourselves to be swept by the tide of pressures that we are living under.
Mhm.
To take that time to be with our dogs and enjoy the world as they do by simply allowing ourselves to be. And I think for that reason, even if it was just for that reason, it would be worth picking up your book. But it's also highly, highly enjoyable. So once again, the book that we've been talking about is Walks with Sam. And I'll make sure a link to that is on the description box.
And you've
And
been very kind. Thank you.
thank you so much, David, for joining us on Pets Talk today.
I loved it. It was great. It was great to meet Teddy there too. Appreciate that.
He is now gone back to his nap. He's very much, and I think he wants to appreciate being well connected.
He's looking for a walk. That's what he wants.
He's got back from his walk and he's had a little shower and it's time for napping.
Okay.
So I just next week I will be talking to Angela Garner about her book When It's Time to Say Goodbye, which is obviously the time we all dread. But she's a bereavement counselor, and I'm sure she will have a great deal of advice to give everyone. Thank you so much for watching, and until then, goodbye.